In today's video, we're going to take a look at a bit of a controversial statement that was made by Stoddy, one of the best Battlefield players I've come across, an absolutely amazing guy who I've met in real life, and probably one of the best streamers that I've watched on Twitch. He's someone who I've followed for absolutely years, from the moment he started in 2013, I believe it was, 2012, 2013, well, that was at least when I started watching him, throughout Battlefield 4, Battlefield 1, Battlefield 5, and even more recently I tune into the odd Call of Duty stream. Great guy, got nothing bad to say about him. He did make a comment though on Twitter the other day that got a few people arguing just a little bit, and as we have absolutely no Battlefield news at the minute, it's something that I thought I could just give my opinion on. And as I'm struggling, to be honest, for Battlefield content, apart from the top plays and only in Battlefield series, I thought, well, why not just show you some of my vehicle gameplay and talk about the comment he made and see what you guys have to say about it. Now essentially, it was a conversation about skill-based matchmaking and how that ruins video games. I can't really argue with that. Skill-based matchmaking makes sense a lot of the time in ranked modes where you want to prove how good you are against a lot of other players. However, having skill-based matchmaking that always places you with players that are around your level doesn't always work as people think. Yes, if you're a bad player, that can be really fun, as you're playing against players that aren't better than you, or maybe they're slightly better, but it puts you in a position where you can learn the game and maybe just casually have some fun. But honestly, you won't be playing against better players, so you'll never reach a really high level. That's the way it works. You need to be playing against the best in order to become the best. A lot of people realise that. I do understand though why some people don't want to be farmed every single match. I certainly would benefit from skill-based matchmaking in Call of Duty, but then again, I think maybe a good balancer is what these games need. You need to have the best player and the second best player on opposite teams. That is the basics really when it comes to these games and FPS games like Battlefield and Call of Duty. Anyway, what sparked the argument though was vehicles in games like this and how you balance those. Stoddy stated that he always felt vehicles in FPS games, and we're talking about Battlefield really here, were a crutch for less skilled players to level the playing field. Now, he wasn't just talking about this, it was more a conversation about skill-based matchmaking, and Twitter, of course, it's very difficult to get a full opinion across in just a few characters. But basically he's saying, how do you balance infantry skill and vehicle skill? Let's say you've got two players, one's playing in a tank and one's playing on the ground as an infantry player, and they're both 40 for 0. Who is the better player? Now in my opinion, it's always going to be the infantry player, because infantry, you're far more vulnerable, you're running around with a weapon that has a finite amount of bullets. In a tank or a helicopter or whatever it is, you of course have far more health, and you're expected, in my opinion, to do far more in one life than just a single infantry player. This though really does bring up quite a good discussion, because how do you balance the two? In Battlefield 4 you have a skill statistic that you can see on Battlelog, and that is affected no matter what vehicle you play in, or whether you play as an infantry player. You see a lot of people, like myself, that can rack up 600 skill, 700 skill very easily in a tank, and then I start playing infantry and my skill drops to 300. Now, does that mean that I'm far worse at infantry than I am at vehicles? Maybe it does, but I think personally it means really that vehicles are far more easy to rack up kills in, as everyone knows if you've ever jumped in a vehicle, and they're far easier to get more points in and reduce your deaths. You expect to die maybe 1 in 10 times in a tank, so 10 kills, 1 death, 20 kills, 1 death. As an infantry player, if I go 20 for 1, I consider that a really good streak. In a tank, maybe I'd be expecting to go a little bit more than that to consider it to be a really good kill streak. Stod's point here is that you can't balance vehicles and infantry with skill-based matchmaking. Now he is right, to be honest. I don't think you can look at that skill, let's say, that we have in Battlefield 4 and say this player has 600 skill, this player has 400 skill, the 400 skill player must be worse. That doesn't really work, because that's simply not the case, especially in Battlefield. Quite often the player with lower skill and maybe a lower KD is far better to have on your team, because they're always on objectives. Yes, they might die a lot, but you don't know how they play. Maybe they're super aggressive. Someone that sits at the back of the map and doesn't really do anything in a tank might not be someone you want on your team, but they might have a really high skill and a really high KPM, potentially, and KD. You don't know how they play, but I certainly want the more aggressive, objective playing player on my side. This is where it gets really difficult, and it's why I wanted to make a video on it. I want to know your opinion on what do we do with this? How do you balance infantry skill and vehicle skill, especially if skill-based matchmaking comes to Battlefield? Now, we all know that EA likes to follow trends. We all know that they tried to catch the Battle Royale trend with Firestorm. They tried to jump on this live service with Battlefield 5. Even with games like Battlefield 4, they were always chasing after Call of Duty, and Battlefield 1 was one of the only times where they went outside the box and thought of something and maybe a setting that no one had ever done before. I think skill-based matchmaking will be in the next Battlefield game. I think the crossplay between consoles and PC is something that they want to go after. I believe that's something we'll see. It's what we're seeing in all the other games. It wouldn't surprise me if it's in Battlefield. As Battlefield is a game that has loads of vehicles and loads of infantry, and usually it's quite badly balanced. If you look at BF4 for an example, it's very badly balanced with vehicles per side, and quite often you will just see one team with all the flags in Conquest. How is that going to play out with skill-based matchmaking? Are we going to end up with servers full of max rank players just battling it out against one another in this really horrible, grindy game? That won't be very fun, trust me. And are we going to see all of the lower skilled players, maybe new players, all in a server on their own, which they might really enjoy? I'm not sure. I think it's really something that we'll have to wait and see. I do think Stod's onto something though when he does say that vehicles in Battlefield are easier to get higher stats with, and therefore messing up skill-based matchmaking. I do think that he's been kind of misquoted a little bit, and his tweet has kind of been taken in the wrong way. Basically, he's asking the question, how do you balance infantry skill and vehicle skill? And it is definitely something very difficult to do. A lot of people did reply to this saying a vehicle can just take as much skill to learn and master as any weapon. That's not what Stud meant. He knows that vehicles take a lot of skill to master. You take the best jet player in Battlefield 4, you try and get on their level, you will not be able to beat them, because they have learned everything there is to learn about jets. Just as if you take the best infantry player on Battlefield, you won't be able to beat them. Vehicles take a lot of skill. He's just saying that matchmaking players based on skill sets that are completely different, such as vehicles versus infantry, or even different types of vehicles, is completely ridiculous, and DICE will never be able to do it. So how do you go about balancing games if skill-based matchmaking does come to Battlefield? I think something that we did see in Battlefield 5 is, and I really don't want to annoy anyone who does play vehicles in Battlefield 5, I know that there is a skill ceiling and you can reach it and you can be a really good player in that game, don't get me wrong. I just feel as if it's very easy to jump on Battlefield 5, take a tank, let's say we're playing Aerodrome, take a tank, sit at the back of the map and farm 30 or 40 kills. You can do that. You can't really do that in any other Battlefield game. I guess you can kind of do it in Battlefield 4 and 3, but due to the lock-ons, you don't really get that get-out-of-jail-free card of just sitting at the back of the map, reversing onto the resupply, and just, you know, farming for the rest of the match. Imagine then that skill-based matchmaking was in the game, and all of these tankers who sit at the back of the map are voted as really high-ranked players because they get a load of kills and have a high KD. How are you going to balance that? You know, it's going to be very, very difficult to do. So, a bit of a different video today, just taking a look at something Stud said, which I think was, you know, taken a little bit out of context, and he couldn't really get his point across in just a few words on Twitter. Of course, you can, you know, add tweets, but one tweet is just going to be a little portion of his opinion, and it didn't really get the whole point across to people. He's not having a go at vehicle players, don't worry. He's just saying that skill-based matchmaking in Battlefield could be very, very difficult to implement. You see how difficult it is to implement in Call of Duty. Imagine doing that in Battlefield, where you have vehicle players and lots of different types of vehicle players, and then infantry players and lots of different types of infantry players. It's going to be a real mess. What do you think of this? Leave a comment down below. Maybe you saw the tweet, maybe you replied to it. What do you think of it? Let me know in the comments. I'll have a read through. It'll give me something entertaining to take a look at whilst I'm trying to find some interesting content to bring you guys from the world of Battlefield. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video.